Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
Why don't you just disappear? The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. I stood frozen in the doorway of our kitchen, watching my stepdaughter Brittany roll her eyes as she scrolled through her phone, not even bothering to look up when she delivered what felt like a death sentence. My wife Monica didn't miss a beat. She was loading the dishwasher with the same mechanical precision she'd perfected over our 8 years of marriage, but her voice carried that familiar edge of contempt I'd grown to know so well. Honestly, we'd be better off without you, David. You just hover, always there, always watching, always in the way. The kitchen smelled like the Thai takeout we'd just finished. The same Thai takeout I'd picked up on my way home from another 12-hour day at my security consulting firm. The same firm that paid for this house, for Brittany's college tuition, for Monica's boutique that hadn't turned a profit in 3 years. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 12 seconds, watching these two women who were supposed to be my family casually discuss how much better their lives would be without me in them. The fluorescent light above the sink flickered the way it had for months, another item on the honey-do list that apparently didn't matter anymore. Brittany finally looked up from her phone, her perfectly manicured eyebrows raised in that expression of entitled annoyance she'd perfected since turning 21. Are you just going to stand there being creepy, or what? I didn't say a word. Couldn't say a word. Something inside me had shifted, like a gear clicking into place after years of grinding. I turned around and walked upstairs to our bedroom. My bedroom, since I was the only one making the mortgage payments. The house was quiet except for the sound of their muffled laughter drifting up from the kitchen. They were laughing. About me disappearing. About being better off without me. I pulled my old duffel bag from the closet, the same one I'd used during my 20 years as a federal marshal before I'd retired into private security consulting. My hands moved with practiced efficiency. Passport, laptop, 3 days' worth of clothes, toiletries, the emergency cash I kept hidden behind my old service awards. The wedding ring came off easier than I'd expected. It made a small, definitive clink when I set it on Monica's nightstand, right next to the romance novel she'd been reading. The same nightstand I'd assembled when we'd first moved in together, back when she used to smile when I came home. I could still hear them downstairs, their voices carrying that light, relieved tone people use when they think their problems are solved. They had no idea their problems were just beginning. You see, Monica and Brittany had made a fundamental error in their assessment of who I was. They saw the quiet guy who fixed things around the house, who paid bills without complaining, who nodded along when they made plans that never included him. They saw a pushover, a convenience, a walking ATM with no spine. What they'd failed to notice over the years was that I was a man who'd spent 2 decades making people disappear into witness protection. I was an expert in erasing lives, creating new identities, and understanding exactly how the financial and legal systems could be manipulated by someone who knew what they were doing. They wanted me to disappear? I could do that. But they'd never considered what would happen to their comfortable little world when the man holding it all together simply vanished. I zipped up the duffel bag, took one last look around the bedroom I'd painted 3 times in 8 years, and walked downstairs. They were in the living room now. Monica curled up on the couch I'd bought her for our 5th anniversary. Brittany sprawled on the carpet with her laptop, probably shopping online with the credit card linked to my account. Neither of them looked up when I passed by. Monica was scrolling through her phone, probably texting her personal trainer, the same personal trainer she thought I didn't know about. Brittany was video chatting with her sorority sisters, complaining about some professor who'd had the audacity to expect her to actually attend class. I paused at the front door, my hand on the handle. Part of me, the part that had loved Monica enough to marry her, the part that had tried to be a good stepfather to a girl who'd never wanted one, wanted to say something, wanted to give them one last chance to take it back, to apologize, to remember that I was a human being who'd given them everything I had. But the larger part of me, the part that had been professionally trained to assess threats and respond accordingly, knew that some lines, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. I walked out into the October evening, threw my bag into my truck, and drove away from the life I'd spent 8 years building. In my rearview mirror, I could see the warm glow of the windows, the perfect picture of domestic contentment. They had no idea they'd just declared war on someone who'd never lost a battle that mattered. I checked into an extended stay hotel across town, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and people going through messy divorces. The room was clean, functional, and completely anonymous. Exactly what I needed. The first thing I did was open my laptop and begin the process of untangling 8 years of shared financial architecture. Most people don't realize how completely intertwined their lives become over time. How many threads connect one person to another through banks, credit companies, insurance policies, and legal documents. Monica and Brittany saw me as deadweight, but what they'd failed to understand was that I wasn't just connected to their lives. I was the foundation their lives were built on. The house was in my name. I'd bought it 2 years before I met Monica, and while she'd redecorated and made it ours, the deed had never changed hands. The mortgage payments came from my business account, automatically, on the 15th of every month. Both cars were in my name. Monica's Tesla, the one she'd insisted she needed for her image as a boutique owner, was financed through my credit line. Brittany's BMW, a graduation gift that had cost me more than most people's annual salary, was registered to me for insurance purposes. Monica's boutique, Elevated Essentials, was a vanity project that had never made money. The initial investment, the ongoing operating costs, the inventory purchases, all of it flowed through business credit lines that I'd personally guaranteed. Her dream of being an entrepreneur was subsidized entirely by my consulting firm's success. Brittany's college tuition, her sorority dues, her credit cards, her apartment near campus, I was the cosigner on everything. At 21, she had no credit history of her own and no income beyond the generous allowance I provided. I'd built their entire world, and now I was going to carefully, methodically, and completely legally dismantle it. I started with the bank accounts. 8 years of marriage meant joint accounts, but it also meant that I had every right to transfer funds to individual accounts in my name. I moved everything except for $500, enough for them to buy groceries for a week if they were careful. Next came the credit lines. Every card, every business loan, every line of credit that was keeping Monica's boutique afloat, I called each company and either closed the accounts or removed the authorized users. It took 4 hours and a dozen phone calls, but by midnight, their access to credit had been completely severed. The utilities were easy. I'd set up all the accounts when we'd moved in, and while Monica's name was on some of them as a secondary contact, I was the primary account holder. I scheduled disconnections for all services except water. I wasn't cruel enough to leave them without basic necessities, but I wasn't going to pay for their comfort anymore. The car payments were more complex, but my years in federal law enforcement had taught me how to navigate bureaucracy. Both vehicles were financed through the same bank I'd used for 15 years. A few phone calls to my account manager, some paperwork faxed from the hotel's business center, and repossession orders were scheduled. By 3 a.m., I'd systematically removed myself as the financial foundation of their lives. Every automatic payment, every credit line, every safety net I'd provided was gone. In the morning, they'd wake up to a world where their comfortable lifestyle had evaporated overnight. I should have felt guilty. 8 years of marriage, even a bad marriage, should have earned Monica some consideration. And Brittany, for all her faults, was barely an adult who'd been raised to expect a certain standard of living. But every time I started to soften, I remembered the casual cruelty in their voices. Why don't you just disappear? We'd be better off without you. Not said in anger, not shouted during a fight, but stated as simple facts during a normal evening at home. They'd made their feelings clear. Now, they were about to learn what life looked like Without the man they'd dismissed so easily. I closed the laptop and tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow would bring phone calls, confusion, and panic. But tonight, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. My phone started ringing at 7:23 a.m. I was already awake, sitting in the hotel's breakfast area with coffee and a newspaper, when Monica's contact photo flashed on my screen. I watched it ring through to voicemail, then took another sip of coffee. The second call came at 7:31, then 7:45. By 8 a.m., I had 6 missed calls and my voicemail was full. I decided to listen to the progression of Monica's emotional state, starting with the first message. David, hey, it's me. The coffee maker isn't working and my card got declined at Starbucks. Can you call me? I think there's something wrong with our account. Message 2, 20 minutes later. David, seriously, where are you? My Tesla won't start. And when I called the dealership, they said something about missed payments, which is ridiculous. Call me back. By message 4, confusion had shifted to irritation. David, this isn't funny. Brittany's card got declined for her sorority dues, and my business account is showing 0 balance. Whatever game you're playing, stop it and call me back. Message 6 was pure panic. David, please. I don't know what's happening. The power went out, my car's gone, and there's a notice on the door about the mortgage. Please just call me back and we can talk about this. I deleted all the messages and ordered another cup of coffee. The calls continued throughout the morning. Monica, Brittany, Monica again. A number I didn't recognize that was probably Monica calling from someone else's phone. By noon, I had 22 missed calls, and my voicemail was full again. I was reviewing quarterly reports for my consulting business when my phone rang with a number I recognized, Monica's mother, Patricia. I almost answered that one. Patricia had always been kind to me, had welcomed me into their family when Monica and I got married. She didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. But when I listened to her voicemail, it was clear Monica had fed her some story about me having a breakdown, about disappearing without warning and leaving them stranded. No mention of what had prompted my departure. No acknowledgement that her daughter and granddaughter had told me to disappear. I called Patricia back, but not to apologize or explain. Instead, I asked her to give Monica a message. If she wanted to talk, she could communicate through lawyers. Then I hung up and blocked all their numbers. The beautiful thing about having worked in federal law enforcement is that you understand how systems work, and more importantly, how they fail. Monica and Brittany were about to get a comprehensive education in what happens when the person holding your life together simply stops. Monica's boutique would be the first casualty. Without access to the credit lines that funded her inventory purchases, she couldn't fulfill orders or restock. The rent on her retail space was due in 2 weeks, and without my business accounts backing her up, she'd have no way to pay it. Brittany's situation was even more precarious. College students live on credit, assuming that money will always be available when they need it. Her tuition payment for the spring semester was due in 6 weeks. Her apartment lease required my signature as guarantor. Her credit cards, her meal plan, her parking pass. Everything was connected to accounts I'd just closed. But the real masterpiece was the house. Monica had always assumed it was ours, had made decisions about renovations and decorating, as if she had equal ownership. The reality was more complex. I'd bought the house before we met, and while we'd lived in it as a married couple, she had no legal claim to it. The mortgage was 3 months behind, deliberately. I'd been routing those payments to a separate account for months, waiting for the right moment to use this leverage. Now, with me gone and no access to my accounts, Monica had no way to catch up on the payments. In 30 days, the foreclosure process would begin. In 90 days, they'd be evicted from the only home Brittany had known since high school. I spent the afternoon apartment hunting. Nothing fancy, just a clean one-bedroom place with good security and a month-to-month lease. I'd learned long ago that flexibility was more valuable than luxury. By evening, I'd signed a lease, arranged for utilities, and started the process of establishing my new life. It was surprisingly easy to disappear when you knew how systems worked and had the financial resources to start over. My phone had stopped ringing by dinner time. Either they'd given up trying to reach me, or they'd finally realized that I wasn't coming back to fix their problems. For the first time in 8 years, I ate dinner in complete silence, with no one complaining about their day, no one asking me to solve problems they'd created, no one treating me like an inconvenience in my own life. It was the most peaceful meal I'd had in years. 3 weeks into my new life, I was settling into a routine that felt more natural than anything I'd experienced during my marriage. I woke up when I wanted, ate breakfast without anyone criticizing my food choices, and spent my days building my consulting business without constant interruptions. The calls had stopped after the first week, replaced by a few desperate emails that I deleted without reading. I'd changed my business phone number and updated all my professional contacts, effectively cutting off their last avenue of direct communication. But I was curious about how they were handling their new reality. So I did what any good investigator would do. I conducted surveillance. Monica's boutique was the easiest target. Elevated Essentials was located in a trendy shopping district downtown, the kind of place where
I cheated on you with your brother. What's wrong?
I will not forgive you for this!
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
wealthy women went to buy overpriced candles and scarves. I parked across the street one Thursday afternoon and watched. The closed sign had been up for over a week, according to the neighboring shop owner I'd casually chatted with. Monica had apparently stopped showing up after her inventory suppliers started demanding cash payments she couldn't make. The landlord had posted an eviction notice 3 days ago. 8 years of funding her dream, and it had collapsed in less than a month without my financial backing. Brittany's situation was more complex, but social media made surveillance easier than it used to be. Her Instagram account was public, and her posts told the story of a young woman whose comfortable world was rapidly disintegrating. 3 weeks ago, her posts were the usual college lifestyle content: expensive dinners, shopping hauls, sorority events. But the recent posts showed a different reality. She was asking friends for rides because her car was in the shop. She was posting about looking for a part-time job, something she'd never needed before. Her latest post was a rant about fake friends who'd stopped including her in activities she could no longer afford. The house was my final stop. I drove by on a Saturday morning, just another car, in the suburban neighborhood where I'd lived for 8 years. The Tesla was gone, obviously repossessed. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks, and there were notices posted on the front door. Monica's car, a 10-year-old Honda she'd driven before we got married, was parked in the driveway. I'd forgotten she still had it, stored in the garage behind the Tesla she'd preferred. It was a visible symbol of how far she'd fallen in just 3 weeks. But the real revelation came from an unexpected source. I was having lunch at a restaurant downtown when I overheard a conversation at the next table. Two women, both around Monica's age, talking in the loud, gossipy tone that meant they were sharing particularly juicy information. "I heard Monica Hartwell's husband just vanished," one of them said. "Left her completely broke." "Well, I heard he found out about her affair," the other replied. "Apparently she's been sleeping with her personal trainer for over a year." I nearly choked on my sandwich. An affair. Monica was having an affair, and somehow I'd missed it completely. That evening, I did what I should have done months ago. I investigated my own wife. Credit card statements revealed a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice. Regular charges at hotels during her supposed business trips. Expensive dinners for two at restaurants she'd never mentioned visiting. Purchases at lingerie stores that had never benefited our marriage. Her phone records, which I could access through our shared family plan, showed hundreds of texts and calls to a number I didn't recognize. A reverse lookup revealed it belonged to Marcus Webb, owner of Elite Fitness Solutions, the gym where Monica had supposedly been working out 3 times a week for the past 18 months. I felt like an idiot. All those late nights at the office, all those weekends spent fixing things around the house while she was running errands. All those times she'd seemed distracted or distant. She'd been cheating on me. But more than feeling stupid, I felt vindicated. They hadn't just casually dismissed me from their lives. They'd been actively betraying me while I supported them. Monica had been living a double life funded by my income, and Brittany had known about it. The cruel comments that night in the kitchen weren't random cruelty. They were the final step in pushing me out so Monica could move on with her personal trainer. I'd thought I was teaching them a lesson about taking me for granted. Now I realized I was delivering justice for something much worse. The next morning, I called my lawyer and started divorce proceedings. But not just any divorce, I was filing in a fault state with adultery as the primary grounds. Monica's affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was a legal weapon that would ensure she got nothing in the settlement. The prenuptial agreement she'd laughingly signed 8 years ago, dismissing it as unnecessary because he'll never leave me, was about to become the most expensive joke of her life. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday morning while Monica was having coffee with her sister at their usual cafe downtown. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard about it from my lawyer, who'd hired a process server with a flair for dramatic timing. According to the server's report, Monica had screamed loud enough to clear 3 neighboring tables when she saw the adultery charges laid out in legal language. The prenuptial agreement she'd forgotten about was attached as Exhibit A, along with a comprehensive financial disclosure showing exactly how much of her lifestyle had been subsidized by my income. Under the terms of the prenup, adultery voided any claim she might have had to alimony or property division. She would leave the marriage with exactly what she'd brought into it, which, after 8 years of living beyond her means, was essentially nothing. But the legal proceedings were just the opening move. I had bigger plans. Marcus Webb, the personal trainer who'd been enjoying expensive dinners and hotel rooms on my credit cards, turned out to be married himself. His wife, Jennifer Webb, was a nurse who worked night shifts and apparently had no idea her husband was conducting training sessions at luxury hotels. I sent Jennifer a carefully compiled package of evidence, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, text message records that I'd legally obtained through the divorce discovery process. I included a note expressing my sympathy for her situation and my regret that we'd both been betrayed by people we'd trusted. Jennifer Webb filed for divorce 3 days later. Marcus's fitness business, which operated out of a rented studio space, suddenly found itself without several key clients. Word travels fast in a small community, especially when it involves scandal. His reputation as a professional trainer was destroyed overnight when his clients realized he'd been using their membership fees to fund his affair with a married woman. But Monica and Brittany's real reckoning was still coming. The house foreclosure proceeded exactly as I'd planned. Monica had no way to catch up on the deliberately missed payments and no legal standing to negotiate with the bank since her name wasn't on the mortgage. She'd spent weeks calling lawyers, trying to find someone who could help her claim ownership of a house she'd never legally owned. The eviction notice came on a Friday. They had 30 days to vacate the premises. Brittany's college career ended more abruptly. Without my financial backing, she couldn't register for spring semester classes. Her student loans, which had required my signature as a guarantor, were called in for immediate payment when the bank discovered I'd withdrawn my guarantee. Her apartment lease, which I'd co-signed, was terminated for non-payment. She tried to stay with friends, but college friendships are often based on shared circumstances. When Brittany couldn't afford to participate in the social activities that had defined her college experience, those friendships quickly faded. Monica attempted to move back in with her parents, but Patricia and her husband had their own financial struggles. They could offer emotional support, but they couldn't afford to subsidize 2 additional adults with expensive tastes and no income. The final blow came when Monica tried to restart her boutique business. She'd managed to find a small space in a less desirable part of town, thinking she could rebuild what she'd lost. But business licenses, inventory, insurance, and operating capital all required resources she no longer had access to. More importantly, her reputation in the community was destroyed. The affair had become public knowledge through the divorce proceedings, and her former customers, mostly married women who valued discretion and moral character, wanted nothing to do with her. 6 months after telling me to disappear, Monica and Brittany had lost their home, their income, their social standing, and their future prospects. They were living in a cramped apartment across town, both working retail jobs to pay for basic necessities. Monica had aged years in months. The stress of financial ruin, public humiliation, and legal battles had taken a visible toll. The confident, entitled woman who dismissed me so casually was now a cautious, anxious person who jumped every time the phone rang, expecting more bad news. Brittany had been forced to drop out of college and move back home. The spoiled young woman who'd told me to disappear was now working at a department store, dealing with customers who treated her the way she'd once treated me, as an inconvenience to be dismissed. I should have felt satisfied. Justice had been served, and the people who'd betrayed me were facing the consequences of their actions. But I wasn't done yet. A year had passed since that night in the kitchen when my family told me to disappear. I'd built a new life, expanded my consulting business, and found a peace I'd never experienced during my marriage. But I still kept track of Monica and Brittany's situation, partly from professional curiosity and partly from a desire to ensure my revenge was complete. They'd stabilized somewhat. Monica had found work as a receptionist at a medical office, a far cry from her dreams of entrepreneurial success, but steady income nonetheless. Brittany had enrolled in community college and was working part-time at a coffee shop, slowly rebuilding her life from the ground up. They'd learned to live within their means, to appreciate what they had, and to understand the value of hard work. In many ways, the experience had made them better people. But I wasn't interested in their personal growth. I was interested in making sure they never forgot the lesson I'd taught them. The opportunity came when Monica's mother called me. Patricia had gotten my new number from my business website and reached out to ask if I'd consider meeting with Monica. Not to reconcile, she understood that ship had sailed, but to provide some closure for both of us. "She knows she was wrong, David," Patricia said during our phone conversation. "She's learned from this, grown from it. She just wants to apologize and maybe find some way to move forward without all this anger between you." I agreed to meet, but not for the reasons Patricia hoped. We met at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown where Monica and I had gone on some of our early dates. She looked older, tired, but there was a humility in her posture that hadn't been there during our marriage. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said after we'd ordered our drinks. "I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness." I nodded but didn't respond. "I want you to know that I understand what I did was wrong," she continued. "The affair, the way I treated you, the things Brittany and I said that night, all of it. We took you for granted and we were cruel, and I'm sorry." She seemed sincere. The apology felt genuine, and I could see that the past year had genuinely changed her perspective on what had happened between us. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I just want you to know that I'm sorry, and that I hope someday you can find peace with what happened." I took a sip of my coffee and looked at her for a long moment. "Monica," I said finally, "do you remember what you said to me that night in the kitchen?" She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I said we'd be better off without you. It was cruel and wrong, and I've regretted it every day since. You also agreed when Brittany told me to disappear." "Yes, I'm ashamed of that." I leaned forward slightly. "Here's what I want you to understand. You didn't just hurt my feelings that night. You declared that I was worthless to you, that my contributions to our family meant nothing, that I was so insignificant that you'd be better off if I simply ceased to exist." She was crying now, but I continued. "So, I gave you exactly what you asked for. I disappeared from your life completely. And you discovered that everything you valued, your house, your car, your business, your lifestyle, your security, all of it depended on the man you dismissed so casually?" "I know," she whispered. "I understand that now." "Do you?" I asked. "Because I don't think you do. You think this was about punishment, about me being vindictive. But it wasn't. It was about truth. You wanted to know what your life would look like without me in it, and I showed you." I stood up to leave, then paused. "You said you hope I can find peace with what happened. I want you to know that I found peace the moment I walked out of that house. For the first time in 8 years, I was free from people who saw me as nothing more than a convenience." Monica looked up at me, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "The life you have now, working for someone else, living paycheck to paycheck, dealing with the consequences of your choices, that's the life you would have had if you'd never met me." I didn't destroy your life, Monica. I just stopped subsidizing it. I left her sitting there and walked out into the afternoon sunshine. My phone rang as I was getting into my car. Monica calling to say something more, probably to beg or argue or try to negotiate some kind of different ending to our story. I declined the call and blocked her number. 2 weeks later, I received a package at my office. Inside was my wedding ring, the one I'd left on Monica's nightstand the night I'd walked out, along with a note. You were right about everything. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. I hope you find happiness. M. I dropped the ring in my desk drawer and threw the note away. That evening, I was having dinner at my favorite restaurant when I overheard a familiar type of conversation at a nearby table. A woman was complaining loudly to her friend about her husband, calling him boring, saying she deserved better, wondering what her life would be like if she'd married someone more exciting. Her husband sat quietly beside her, occasionally nodding, occasionally trying to redirect the conversation to something more positive. He looked tired, defeated, like a man who'd spent years being told he wasn't enough. I almost walked over to warn him. Almost told him what I'd learned about people who don't appreciate what they have until it's gone. But everyone has to learn their own lessons. I finished my dinner, paid my check, and drove home to my quiet apartment where no one questioned my choices, criticized my habits, or took my contributions for granted. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be, with exactly the life I'd chosen. They'd told me to disappear, and I had. But in disappearing, I'd found myself.